Hello, Sonder fam. Welcome to our Sunday evening weekly setup. My name is Bailey Grady, and I will be your facilitator for this evening. I'm dialing in from Hendersonville, Tennessee, which is about 15 minutes north of Nashville when there's no traffic. If you are new here with us, welcome. We are super excited to have you. There's a great group here of lots of our returning socialers I can already see. So while I will be leading you through the different sections of the journal and giving you some tips and tricks, also be sure that you're checking out the chat because we have lots of good sharing that goes on there as well. And speaking of the chat, if you want to share with the group, it's going to be very important that you change that little blue box there, which is probably set to host and panelist, down to everyone. If you don't set it to everyone, then not everyone will be able to see what you have to say. And I bet you have super fun things to share and say. So definitely make sure that you do that for us. And also, as we go through, feel free to take screenshots, take notes. It doesn't bother us at all. We don't have a problem with that. Sometimes the chat can move fast as well, too. We have over 200 people dialing in here with us tonight, which is awesome. So you can always like scroll up in the chat if you need to stop it periodically. Or if the chat stresses you out and you don't want to listen to it or look at it, that's fine too. You do not have to participate in the chat if that's not your vibe this evening. But it is there for you if you do want to. So let me go ahead and go over our community guidelines here real quick. So as always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam, please. Be sure that you're respecting everyone's privacy here, which also, means no hate speech or bullying, of course. And then try to limit repetitive product and accessory questions here. We want to try to stay on topic as much as we can. We don't mind like asking little things here and there about like, oh, what's your favorite stickers or what's your favorite markers? But Sonder Club is actually like a great place to get recommendations for that. So you could also just jot down a note to make a post in Sonder Club about it later. And then anything that's not directly related to what we're covering tonight, like if you are not sure where your journal is, you've been waiting on it and like shipping isn't updated or something like that, myself and my fabulous stage manager, Katie, who's also going to be here with us tonight helping out in the chat. There she is. She's popping on to wave hello all the way from Scotland. We don't have access to that information, so we will redirect you over to headquarters for some of those things. Their email is going to be hello@silkandsonder.com. So if we steer you that direction, it is because we do not have the answers that you need. And speaking of delayed journals, if yours hasn't come in yet, that is totally fine. Don't panic. Just grab some spare bits of notebook paper or something to write with or take notes on. You can take notes in your phone even, and then whenever your journal does get here, you'll be ready to set it up and be all ready to go. And then finally, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-beings, and decisions. Even in our like weekly, monthly setup type of things, we can get really like squishy emotionally here, and we love that. We love being authentic and vulnerable and all of the sharing, but sometimes that means that we get into some squishy areas that maybe we're not ready to actually visit with yet, and that's okay. So if you ever need to take a break, if you need to come back to something, if you need to not explore something right this second, you have permission to leave it alone for now and come back to it later, or not come back to it at all if that's what you need to do. So with all of that said, we are going to get into our agenda here, which is going to be around our theme of ambition. So our theme this month, ambition. It's kind of like a dirty word, right? Like I feel like ambition has gotten this like really terrible rap because in so many places and spaces, it has sort of been used as an excuse to, for some people, it's been used as an excuse to maybe belittle other people or take advantage of them, right? It's like, oh, well, you just need to be more ambitious, or like, I'm not being a jerk, I'm just ambitious, right? Like a lot of the times ambition has that sort of like negative connotation with it. But the truth is, the definition of ambition is there on the screen for you. And it's just a strong desire to do or to achieve something, typically requiring determination and hard work, the desire and determination to achieve success. That's it. That's all it meant. That's all it is. So not really a dirty word. And likewise, when we look at that definition, right, I think what really speaks to me is that strong desire to do or achieve something, that very first sentence. Some days, just getting out of the bed and being like a functional human takes a lot of strong desire for me. I was telling Katie earlier that I'm in a season right now where like I just don't want to cook, and that's not necessarily normal for me. Like I typically really enjoy cooking. I love food. It's a fun thing for me, but for whatever reason right now I am just not into it at all. And so making any kind of a meal right now requires quite a bit of ambition from me. I'm very fortunate in that I have a partner who's willing to kind of step in and help and and take over sort of last minute and step in there. But yeah, some days are ambition can look like small little things, right? It doesn't always have to be this huge next step in your career or this next life-changing big thing, but sometimes it is those things too, and that's awesome when it is, right? So I think it's just taking that pressure off of that word to be anything other than what it means to you, what speaks to you in this season of life for you right now in this moment. So keeping that in mind, we are going to dive into our agenda. So we will do our ambition mind maps. For those of you that are new, each week at the weekly setups, we will do a little prompt that is centered around our theme. So we'll be getting into that next. And then we're going to do a little reflection on last week. So doing our rosebud thorn, and then we'll get into our weekly setup pages for next week. So diving back into ambition, this month we're going to reflect on those different aspects of ambition and how you see it playing out in your life. And we're going to do this over 4 weekends this month. So this is actually our second weekend. So this week we are focusing in on week 2 here. And our prompt is, sometimes people feel like life is not fair or that they can't get what they're wanting. How do you think people who achieve great things think about life and ambition? Now, this is a little bit of a different prompt than what we see with our mind maps sometimes. Katie and I did another social together this morning and flip-flop roles, and she was saying like it's a little bit more like introspective and kind of like analytical. It's not like asking you anything directly, but I think it's sneaky because it is kind of asking you something. It's asking you to take a look at 2 things. One, how you perceive like success and how you perceive greatness, and then also just a little very passive pulse check of like, hey, does your perspective on this maybe need a little bit of updating? So all that to say, here's my little mind map page. You can do this anywhere in the journal where you have free space. I always just pick the very last page and the very last like blank page in the journal to do mine because it's just easy to flip to. But I know some people like to use like the scratch section or just different parts of the weekly, or they pick another page, so you can use anything that works for you. For me, for answering this prompt, which is in the top left of the screen there still, I said, I think people who achieve truly great things don't take setbacks personally. Sometimes that can be really hard depending on the situation, but I think true achievement comes from knowing yourself, loving that person, and extending as much love and light into the world as your heart desires without overextending yourself. If we constantly focus on the setbacks or obstacles in our way, it's hard to get moving and spend time with ourselves and growth. So that was what I said for this, and I have lots of little fun inspirational quotes on the screen for you. So I'll hop back and forth between these slides while I give you a few minutes to think about your own response to this prompt. And then we'll move on to our next section. Thank you all for taking a few moments to spend some time with this prompt, and for those who were able to share in the chat. Like I said in the chat, if you saw it when I answered this prompt, I really had to focus in on like what I consider great things to be, right? Because I think sometimes we think like great things is it's something like attributed to like typical success, right? Like you like build a huge family or you like achieve something in your career or whatever the case may be. But to me, like living authentically without stress or pressure from others is a really great thing. So is like taking time to rest and just like consistency in general. Like it's really hard for me to be consistent. It's something that I struggle with. So meeting people that are consistent is like super big greatness to me. So sometimes it's just about flipping your perspective. So, speaking of perspective, we are now going to sort of say a nice thank you goodbye to the last 7 days by reflecting over them before we get ready for the next 7 days ahead. And we do that with our rosebud thorn exercise. So, a rose is a bright spot, something that's going well, something that maybe made you smile. It could be something big, it could be something small. A bud is an emerging opportunity. So it could be something you're really excited about, or it could be something you're a little more nervous about, or both. And then a thorn is usually like a challenge, something that maybe isn't going so well. I always like to read mine in reverse because I like to end on the rose. So my thorn was that I kicked off the new year with a stomach bug, got sick like New Year's Day at about 3:30. Super duper fun. Thankfully, it only lasted about a day or so, but it was not what I had in mind for a total body reset, to say the least. And then my bud is that I found out some of my friends for Canada might be in Disney at the same time as me later this year. And so I'm super duper excited because I wasn't sure if I get to see them this year. So that is my bud. And then my rose is my husband Cameron being just so generous with his time and energy lately because, like I said, I just have not been motivated to cook. I've also not been motivated to do any sort of house chores. And so he's just been kindly sort of bearing the brunt of that load. And I really appreciate it. And it makes me feel very loved. So I will give you all a few minutes to think about your rose, bud, and thorn of the last 7 days. And if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, we would love to see it. And then after that, we'll get into our weekly setup. right. Thank you all so much for spending some time thinking about your rosebud and thorns and sharing in the chat if you felt comfortable. As a reminder, whenever you do this exercise, sometimes a rose is a fresh page in the journal. Sometimes a bud is a new week ahead. I think that very few of us are lucky enough to struggle to not think of a thorn, but sometimes those other ones can be harder. But usually, if we don't complicate it, we can find one. So we are now getting into our main event, our weekly planner setup. So what this looks like for those of you who are new is we're going to be diving in on pages 32 and 33 of the January journal. And again, if you don't have yours yet, that's okay. Just take notes and then you'll be ready when it comes in. But we're going to be diving into the different sections of this weekly spread so that you can get some ideas and tips and tricks of how you want to set up your journal. And then we'll be giving you time to actually put the pen to paper yourself and get that setup done. So we're starting on page 32 at the top with how I want to feel. And one more thing to mention, as we go through, I'm going to have several example slides in each of these categories. So I will be hopping in between the slides, not just when I'm presenting, but also when I give you all time to do your journals as well. So again, feel free to take screenshots, but also if I move away from a slide that you love, don't worry, I'll come back to it as well. So there is sort of like a word cloud here for some inspiration for your This Week I Want to Feel, but we also have some examples from the Sonder Club. I chose the word embrace for 2024. That's going to be my word of the year. So I've actually changed the This Week I Want to Feel to This Week I Want to Embrace. And we'll see if I decide to continue that all year or not. But I'm going to try it this week. So this week I want to embrace a new bedtime routine. And I'm going to pair my weekly like habits and activities to kind of go along with whatever I'm embracing. So that's what I'm doing currently. You can see there's all kinds of different things on the screen, and you can also see that you don't have to limit it to just one word. It could be a phrase, it could be one word, and then things that sort of resonate that word for you. So whatever this looks like for you is always okay. This is your journal. We want you to make it work for you. So I'll put on some music for you while you think about how you want to feel. Okay, hopefully you settled on a word of how you want to feel over the next 7 days. If not, that's okay. It might come to you as you move through the other sections here. So we are now going to move into our weekly major three and weekly to-do. So these are sort of in the center of the page on page 32. And the reason that I like to pair these two sections together is we're seeing more and more people deciding to sort of marry the two together within the journal. And you can kind of see what I mean by that on the screen with the examples over on the left. So these folks have, picked their major three goals, and then they have decided to pick some to-dos that go with each one of those three goals. So you can see that over on the left side of the screen there. And then actually from our social this morning that Katie and I did, Julie shared that she was trying something different this month, and each week she's choosing 3 of her monthly intentions to focus on, and then setting goals tied to those and to-dos tied to those. So I wanted to share that as well. The person in the center is tying their major three actually up to their feelings. You can see they've given themselves a little note there that says goals should support the way we want to feel. So you could also pick a major three goals that goes with how you want to feel, and then think about to-dos that are going to support those, so that all kind of like holistically goes together. For my major three, I do not pair them together currently. I may decide to switch that up at some point. I just kind of think about what I have going on in the week and what are like the 3 things that if I get them done, I'm going to feel the most better overall, what is going to make me feel like my load has been lightened. And so that's how I kind of pick my major three. But I do pair my to-dos up with my little bitty calendar there, in the sense that I kind of circle the days where I have like appointments and put little dots around the things where I have reminders. And then I have sort of a running like reminder list right now, because there's a lot of things that I need to do. And I don't think I'm going to have a trouble doing them. I just keep forgetting about them. So I've decided to put them there so that I don't forget about them. So I want to give you some more examples here. So looking at those weekly to-dos, if you are somebody that has a big to-do list, kind of like me, or maybe yours looks worse than mine even, and you are struggling to even fit it all on that one page, you may want to look into using the Eisenhower matrix there on the top left of the screen. It kind of makes you put your to-do list items into categories, with the overall hope that either you're deciding, what you're actually going to do this week, what maybe needs to wait until another week, or maybe what actually isn't important and like you don't need to worry about altogether. Because sometimes we do put pressure on ourselves to do things and we feel like we have to do them when actually we don't. So sometimes if you're already busy, it's not a good time to put more of that pressure on yourself, right? You can also try a need, want, or hope list. So sort of like dividing those categories into the things you need, the things you want, the things you hope for. You could do a to be list. So instead of all the things you want to do, you can do all the things you want to be this week. That can tie in really nicely with how you want to feel if you're deciding to go that route. And then of course, using a to-do list instead of a to-do list. So instead of writing out all the things you need to do, you write things down as you complete them. And it's like a totally different mindset shift, right? Like it makes you feel like, oh my gosh, look at all the things I've done, instead of, oh my gosh, look at all the things I have to do. So if that works better for you, you can give that a try. We love a bingo here at Salk and Sonder. You will find examples of bingo boards just about in every corner of this journal, and this section is no exception. So if you want to turn it into a to-do list bingo, you can do that, or a to-do bingo, you can do that. If you have something fun going on this week or this month, or you want to pair it up to like a theme or your word of the year, you could do like a themed bingo. You can also try dividing into different areas of focus, routine, or change it all together. And as always, stickers and doodles are also fun and welcome. And then these are some examples for the weekly major three. So you can kind of, again, divide into different areas of focus. That seems to work really well for people, especially when they're pairing these two sections together to kind of do 3 very like clear sections, but it doesn't have to be 3. That's the other thing about those major 3 goals. If you just need it to be 1 major goal, that's fine. If it needs to be 2, if it needs to be 5, whatever it needs to be for you, that's what you should make it be. You can also do actual goals, commitments, and accountability, or more like general broad intentions. And you could also try doing a stop list. So instead of 3 things you want to do, 3 things you want to stop doing. And then we have a few more examples here, as well as some ideas to repurpose and some tips and tricks here. So again, you can try to support that feeling of how you want to feel. You can look at this as a combined section with the to-dos and kind of marry those two together. You could go back to those monthly intentions like Julie did and try to sort of use those in here. You could go down to 1 or 2 goals, increase it to 4 or 5, whatever you need, or you can change this completely and make it something fun, movies and TV shows, a self-care jar that you can kind of pull from when you have time or when you want, or change it into like a quote or just fun 3 things for you to do. And of course, it can always just be a place to doodle or jot things down. So that was a lot of stuff. That was a lot of examples. Don't worry, I'm going to give you a good chunk of time and I'm going to go back through all of these little sections. So if you missed it, it'll come back around. And then we'll move into our next section together. All right. Thank you for spending some time on your to-dos and major three goals. Hopefully you decided what you wanted to do with them, if you wanted to keep them separate, if you wanted to pair them together, or how you wanted that to show up in your journal. And for those of you that are getting started, don't be afraid to try new things. If it doesn't work out, guess what? You can do something different next week. So we are now moving into the habit and activity section. So this is the bottom of page 32. So with this section, you obviously have these different lines. You can put different habits and activities that you want to track going into the week. You can decide to fill in all of the lines or just a few of them, or add more if you need to. You can also set a goal for yourself. So you could say, I want to do this particular activity or goal 3 times this week. And this one 5, and etc. Or you can just decide to just track it and see kind of how it goes or how it comes up. I really like the example where the person focused on the activity part of this. And so they like listed out relaxing activity, active activity, mental activity, etc. And then you also could track how much of something you don't do by doing like a no list in this section. For me, I said that, this week I want to embrace a new bedtime routine. And so I'm putting that here. So instead of habits and activities, I've scratched that out and put bedtime routine. So hopefully I will head to bed by 9 p.m., wash face, brush teeth, take my meds, meditate, and then no more phone. We'll see how that goes. With that said, you can also just say no thanks to this section and decide to just take a break or use stickers to cover this space or repurpose for reflection. There is obviously your monthly habit wheel in the front of the journal. So sometimes, especially again, if you are getting started, this can feel a little overwhelming where you're like, oh my gosh, I have habits in the front of the wheel and now I have habits here and this is a lot of things. You never want your journal to stress you out. Your journal should be there to help you and make your life easier, not make it harder. And so if this isn't speaking to you, just skip it. But what we sort of encourage is that, the habit wheel on the monthly side should be things that you're wanting to track every single day. Whereas in this section, you may have a couple things that you just need to focus on for just this week and then not pick them up again the rest of the month. Or maybe you have some habits that are going really well, and so you want to stretch them a little bit, right? Like maybe you have a habit on your habit wheel where you're like, every day I want to walk 5,000 steps, right? And that's been going really well. It's only January 7th, but it's going really well. And so maybe 3 times this week, you want to try for 7,000 steps, right? So you can use it to kind of like stretch things. Or if you have something that isn't going super well, like maybe your goal was to go to bed at 9 o'clock every night. Maybe that's not going so well. So maybe this week we're going to change that to 10. You can really use this however it works best for you, or skip it altogether if it doesn't serve you. So I'll put on some music for you while you think about this, and then we'll move into our other sections. Okay, hopefully you picked out some habits or gave yourself permission to just leave this alone this week, whatever you need. We are now going to flip over to page 33, starting with the section that is titled Meal Plan. Now, this section takes up a lot of real estate in your journal, and so because it takes up so much space, it often gets repurposed. We do have a lot of members that use this as intended as a meal plan or a meal tracker, or like meals and feels if you're like sort of tracking like emotional eating or something of that nature. So it does get repurposed for food related things a lot, or rather, it gets used for food related things a lot, but it also gets repurposed quite a bit. And that's why you'll notice that some of these older examples still actually have like breakfast, lunch, and dinner listed because that was in the journal previously. But now those items have been removed because this section does get repurposed so much by our Sonder fam. So you could use this for affirmations, work with school study, schedules. You can use it as a place of reflection. And you can do that by either using like an acronym like GLAD, so gratitude, learning, accomplishment, delight. Or I really like the example in the center where she did this week, I learned, created, loved, remembered, and accomplished. This is a good place to stick your affirmations, like I said, as well. A packing list if you're going somewhere, that can be super helpful. If you're somebody that like plans out your outfits for the week, this can be super helpful. You can also use it as a cleaning plan. Somebody did it as a daily creativity prompts for fall back during fall time, and it's so cute. I couldn't get rid of the example. It's too cute. So it's still here. If you do words of the day, there's just endless things and possibilities you could do with this section. For me, I put my like work schedule here. So like actual meetings and things that I have to attend. And it actually has like saved me a time or two because I've been able to sort of look at that and then look at my to-dos and see if I have anything overlapping. I got promoted last year and that was great, but it also meant a lot more meetings and I wasn't really used to juggling that as a part of my schedule. So it's been really helpful for me to put that in my journal where I can see it at a glance very clearly. So take some moments to think about how you would like to set up this section, and then we'll move into our next sections. All right. So hopefully you have a direction in mind of how you want to utilize this section. If you don't, that's okay. Something might come to you later today or tomorrow once you've had a night to sleep on it. So we are now moving into our mind body health plan. So still on page 33 over on the top right, just underneath our quote of the week there. So there's just like everything, you're gonna hear me say this like over and over and over again. You can do infinite things with this section because you can do infinite things with your journal. So you can use this as intended and actually write out something specific to take care of your mind, body, and health that you'd like to do each day. Somebody actually decided to divide it into mind, body, and health specifically. You can see it sort of on the center left there. But you'll notice they also carved out 2 days as a reset for themselves. And the person above them did the same thing. They carved out 2 days for just like relaxing. So this is always a good place to remind ourselves that rest is an action and it's very important. And if you aren't familiar with the 7 types of rest, it is there on the screen. So I have also seen people decide to use this as sort of like a check-in space with yourself. So for example, on Monday, you would think about it, right? You would sort of sit with yourself and say, okay, I had a busy day today. What areas of energy do I feel the most depleted? And then maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I was so social today. I need social rest. So then maybe you budget time in for that Thursday or sometime during the week later when you have time for that. So it can be a good little check-in space for yourself around rest and those 7 types of rest. I like to do a little self-care bingo here. So I try to put a mix of like things I know I can do, like kitty snuggles, and things that might be a little bit harder, like cooking dinner. And so that kind of motivates me to check off the little boxes and things. You can do a weekday check-in with yourself over other things, or you could use this as a space to check in with friends and family throughout the week. I know I have a tendency to not think about checking in with people until it's like 10 o'clock at night and then they're asleep. So sometimes having that front of mind helps us keep in touch with the people that are important to us. But of course, you can switch this up and do something totally different. You could put just a fun quote here. You could turn it into sort of like household chores or things like that. You could change it to a hobby like reading or plant care. You could do a feel and need tea chart here. Or of course, you can just put stickers or quotes or just a simple reminder to breathe and keep going, right? So just think about how you would like to use this section, focusing in on that mind, body, health, and then we'll do our shopping list and wrap up together. All right. Hopefully you decided how you want to use this section. We have 1/2 more sections, and then I do have a few examples of the actual weekly spread I can share with you all. So our last section is the shopping list. I use this as intended. It's a shopping list for me. I have a tendency to impulse buy a lot of things because I'm afraid if I don't buy it as soon as I think about it, I'll forget to buy it altogether. So having a place to actually write it down where I know it's recorded in some way, I'm not going to forget about it. we can wait a few weeks has really helped me with my impulse spending. But people love to use this section for a variety of things because a lot of people use different apps and other things for their shopping list and things like that. So you could do self-care bingo here to kind of go along with the mind body health plan. You could do a ta-da bingo here. I've seen people that do like the to-do list for to-dos, but then they do their ta-da list over here. So you could do that, for example. I love the people that decide to use this as like a washi scraps place because it's like fun little abstract art. And then I also really like the person that decided to make a putting ambition to work bingo that is ambitious and fun. So I love that. So I'll give you all a few minutes to think about how you would like to use this section. As always, you can feel free to just put a quote that you love there or a sticker, or just save it for later in case a use comes up for you. Okay, so real quick, I'll come back to the I'm loving actually. I wanted to show this to you all. So like if you flip over to pages 34 and 35, you're going to see the weekly spread. Or at least that's what I call it, is the weekly spread. And we get a lot of questions from folks of like how to use this. And we don't get a ton of examples because if you're like me, sometimes you use it, like I use mine for work stuff. So it's just a big, long running to-do list of work things. And that's not interesting or helpful or entertaining in any way. But I love the person that has their AM and PM routines. And then it looks like somebody's got, events, and then they've got like some different apps and things that they do and outfits of the day. And I love their little doodles. Somebody's just divided it into an affirmation, a get it done kind of to-do list thing, and then daily recaps. And then, of course, just a place for affirmations. We got asked earlier in the social this morning, like, hey, where do you actually journal in the journal? So if you don't have a use for this section and you are somebody that likes to reflect daily, this could be a really great space for you to do that. So just a few ideas for that. So hopping back over to I'm loving. So I'm currently loving rest. That's just the season that I'm in right now. But I love all of these examples here. And if you would like to share with us in the chat what you are loving as we close out our time together, we would love to see it. And it is time for us to end our time with each other. It's always the fastest hour in the online wilderness, is what I like to say. That's how these socials are. They always go by super fast. But Katie and I absolutely love spending time with you all this evening, getting ready for our week ahead. There are some QR codes and things on the screen there, and then Katie is going to pop some links for those things in the chat. We're still doing the Refer a Friend program, so if you refer somebody to Silk and Sonder, they get $10 off, you get $10 off. If you're able to upgrade to an annual subscription, you can save yourself some money, so something to consider. And then if you all would, please fill out the new social survey. Tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like, what you'd like to change, different ideas, different time zones. All of that stuff is super duper helpful for headquarters when they are sort of putting together the schedule and things. And last but not least, all of our socials are recorded. And we get them up on YouTube for you to view within a few days. HQ does that for us. So if you ever can't make it to one, or if you want to go back and review one, if you save that YouTube link, you'll be able to go back and do that. It's not searchable, I don't think. I think Maya said one of the other facilitators, Maya, she said that she was able to find some of the stuff by searching, but I would bookmark that link that Kitty threw in the chat just in case, because you never know what kind of good stuff is in there. There's like over 400 socials, so even like older ones from before you were even a member are still on there if you want to check those out. And then finally, I will share my playlist in the chat for you. So mine's sort of like a combo playlist this month where I didn't really get to do a lot of December socials. I had some not so great family things happen. My grandfather passed, and unfortunately that meant that I didn't get to do any socials. So I decided to tweak my playlist for December and make it work for January. So I've thrown that in the chat. If you want to follow it, you can. But fair warning, all of my playlist eventually gets cycled into my master list. So if you ever get super attached to one, I'm sorry, it will probably go away at some point, but you can always go to my master list and find any and all the songs I've ever used at social ever in there. So with all of that said, thank you all so much for joining us. It was my pleasure hosting you. And until next time, we'll see you all in Sonder Club.
What I love most about rivers is you can't step in the same river twice. The water's always changing, always flowing. But people, I guess, can't live like that. We all must pay a price. To be safe, we lose our chance of ever knowing what's around the river bend, waiting just around the river bend. I look once more, just around the river bend, beyond the shore, where the gulls fly free, don't know what for. What I dream the day might send, just around the river bend. For me, coming for me. I feel it there beyond those trees, or right behind these waterfalls. Can I ignore that